Now joining me from the Pakistani capital is Javed Rana, political analyst Javed Rana. Javed, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Javed, let's talk about China and how China has developed into a major superpower. We've seen economic reforms, we've seen political reforms, we've seen improvement in technology. How has China developed itself into such a big superpower that it is today?
I think to begin with, in 2001, China joined the WTO, World Trade Organization, which means basically China used the weapon of free trade to trade with the entire world. I think that was a beginning point when China started to rise economically. Now, since then, from onwards, things are clearly going in favor of China's economy. I think with the launch of BRI, the Build and Road Initiative project, I think that was one of the key projects with which China has basically set up, constructed roads. It has established links, rail links. It has built up the sea lanes connecting Asia to parts of the Europe, to the parts of the Africa. And basically, it's just spreading trillions of dollars economy into Asia, Europe, and African countries, and creating a bigger political cloud in Asia, Africa, and Europe. That has been a troubling sign for the Americans. Americans' assessment, their think tank's assessment back in 2002, 2001 was that the China would be the biggest economy by 2024. I think that has not happened, but I think they were very close in their assessment. Now, the economists are saying that the China would be the biggest economy by 2030. Now, this is the fear, the core fear of the Americans establishment, deep state, Donald Trump, and everybody who matters in the USA. They want to contain China. Because unlike China, whenever there were some other countries, they used bombs, they were smaller countries, and then they prevented them their rise to the power economically. But in case of China, I think the Americans have not been able to do much. Now, it is a kind of a very frustrating situation. Donald Trump has been saying time and again that they want to bring back these manufacturing industry to the USA and go back to the situation like in 1950s and 60s when the US was contributing 50 to 60% manufacturing industry globally. Now, the manufacturing industry in the USA is hardly 8%. US trade surplus is still there. It's more than $1 trillion US, but that they are getting from the service economy. Now, service economy has been the key component of the economic survival of the USA the world over. Now, Donald Trump is trying to reverse back the situation to the 70 years when the world has changed altogether. 70 years ago, AI was not there, technology was not so advanced, and now even if there is an import and export of software, I think then the Chinese companies and the American companies and the individuals and citizens there, they don't need the permission of the Donald Trump. They can use the other means through which they can bypass all these tariffs, something Donald Trump is not understanding. I think at the end of the day, everybody now is saying that the service economy is also becoming a leading source. And it's not just USA who's earning its remittances, who's earning its exports from the service economy. Germany has also switched over to the service economy. And now he's trying to basically, he has brought a economic model which looks like in this time and age as if it is an ancient, an old one, which is not very much applicable. And then the kind of the rhetorics which are coming from the White House that looks like that Donald Trump is trying to brutalize the international economy with the heavy tariffs. Nearly $5 trillion losses are there in the international stock markets in all over the world. and there is going to be a global recession. It is now quite obvious. And if the Americans think that they can bring back these manufacturing industry to the US, I think they are living in fool's paradise. It is not going to happen so soon. It will take time. And by then, I think maybe the Donald Trump's tenure as the president would come to an end. He is unlikely to get his third term, going by the Constitution of the USA, despite the very desperate desire of Donald Trump. So in a broader picture, I foresee that the China is going to win. Now, with the retaliation from the China to the US tariff, once again, the US has come up with now the total tariff imposed on China is 104%, which means it is basically creating a kind of a trade barrier whereby there is normal trade is not possible. China would be using the third countries to export its products to the USA, and I don't foresee that the US would not be able to do much on this.
Javed, now, when we talk about world powers, we can talk about China and we can talk about the United States as well. But then there are regional powers as well, and one of them is India. India has always been a big threat to China, to the Chinese government. And over the last few years, we've also seen there have been so many border clashes as well. There have been border clashes, and then there's the issue of Kashmir as well, where China supports Pakistan. So how do you look at those developments? Do you think India could give a tough time to China?
I don't think India can give tough time to the China, but India is an irritant. Both economically, and politically, and also militarily speaking. In 2020, there were clashes border clashes between India and China, and we witnessed that India lost as many as 18 to 20 of its soldiers. And then China has its claim on one of its province, state, the seven sister states. One of them is what China has been claiming. And in a similar fashion, I think India has its claim over Chinese territory. But those are the territorial disputes which I don't think India can fight a war with China. In 1962's war, India lost it. And I think there was a similar situation in 2022 when there was a clear apprehensions, fears that this border escalation could have exploded into a bigger war. And that is why India gave in and had some sort of a compromise on the border. At least there was a kind of a management on the border issue. Now, I think in a broader picture, we have to also understand that why did those clashes happen at that time and what are its relevance right now? India thought that by annexing Kashmir, the next step it would have been that it might have tried to intervene militarily in Gilgit-Baltistan, which is part of Pakistan. It is essentially a disputed territory like Kashmir. It has to be decided as per UN Security Council resolution. So, and now from Gwadar port to the west of the China, there's a road which passes through the Gilgit-Baltistan, which is a disputed territory. There were apprehensions in Beijing that India might try to take it over because the Indian news channels were broadcasting the weather of Gilgit-Baltistan, and there were threatening statements coming from the India that they're going to take over Gilgit-Baltistan. So I think in that context, that military intervention was there. It looked like at that particular point of time that the China would watch its interest at every cost. Now, BRI's bigger part is in Pakistan, which is known as CPAC, China-Pakistan Corridor. It is a $65 billion in Chinese investment. It means that it provides China an alternative route to its trades and its military supplies from Arabian Sea to China in the event of a war in South China Sea with the USA and its allies like India and other South Asian countries. So in that broader picture, there's a China containment policy which is in place in this part of the world at least. In Pakistan, Americans are using India and Indians are using proxies in southwest of Pakistan, and they are attacking Pakistan's military forces, the other security personnel. They are killing people from Punjab on ethnic grounds. And the core reason at this is I think it is a BRI project. It's a Chinese project because this project has basically shattered the US economic hegemony the world over. So these are the fears, I think, one of the key battle lines of Americans, which is not discussed and debated more in Pakistan's Baluchistan province, where Americans through India have been using these proxies. During last 5 years, these proxies, these terrorist groups, they have killed as many as 19 Chinese engineers and the citizens, and that is something which has obviously a setback to the Chinese investment in Pakistan. They are trying to cause a kind of problems between China and Pakistan, and obviously Pakistan has not been able to provide security to the Chinese. So in that context, I think it's a bigger picture where a country which is not politically as much important on the global scene, and that is Pakistan. I think Pakistan's Baluchistan province is the battleground that is going to determine the future of China's trillions-dollar BRI projects all over the world, and that is where the terrorism is going on, and the USA and the Indians are behind it.
Javed, we're in the last 5 minutes of our program, so very shortly I want to get back to you and ask you, tell me about how China is dealing with the war in Ukraine. It has shown a neutral stance. It has supported Ukraine. It has supported Russia at the same time, but it has called on the Russians to stop the war. How is China dealing with the war in Ukraine?
I think China basically has projected itself as a neutral player in a war between Ukraine and Russia, but it has not been a neutral player. It has provided Russia kind of the products and the technology which is of dual use. That has been a lingering concern in Washington in the past. But I think in a broader picture, China has also made its roads economically. It has expanded its economy into the Russian markets. Its exports have enhanced because of the fact that there were the West, Europe, and the USA imposed heavy sanctions on Russia. So it was an opportunity for China, which it has exploited, I think, to the best of its abilities. Now the trade deficit between China and Russia has further shrunk, but it is still slightly in favor of Russia.
Javed, thank you for being on the program. That was political analyst Javed Rana, who was joining me from Islamabad.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.